Hello and welcome to the Stylus Showcase. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Matt Hamilton. I'm a developer advocate with the Arbitrum Foundation. And this is a series talking about Stylus from the developer point of view. So this is the last in our current series that we have, last episode in the current series of developer-focused interviews. We also have some user-focused ones that will be happening in January. We also have another of our Stylus Pro series happening in December, so look out for that. And if you want to see any of these previous ones, any of the previous developers we've spoken to, or the Stylus Pro workshop series, then you can find those on our YouTube channel, also here on X and on Sanko TV. We're streaming live on all three of those right now. So so check out the previous ones if you want to find out some more. We also, just a quick plug for a whole bunch of exciting upcoming stuff happening in the Arbitrum ecosystem in terms of events. We have Edge City Lana going on in Chiang Mai in Thailand right now. I'm going to be heading over there. I'm literally catching a flight after this stream to head over there for the Edge City Lana hackathon that is happening. So we've got a week-long hackathon happening in person in Chiang Mai. And then following that, over to Bangkok for DevCon. We have the DevCon, massive big Ethereum Foundation DevCon event that is happening. And we will have a Arbitrum booth there, so you can come along and chat to people from the Arbitrum Foundation, from Offchain Labs, from the various projects within the Arbitrum ecosystem. We have Arbiverse, which is our own event that is happening. I believe that's the Wednesday happening within the sort of DevCon week. And then at the end of all of that, we have ETH Global Bangkok, which is looking to be a massive hackathon. From what I understand, there's over 2,000 people registered. There's something like $750,000 worth of prizes for that. And we have a prize pool in there, $20,000. So feel free to check that out. So that's everything about this stream and everything that's coming up. So now, if we can, we're going to bring up our two guests today. So we have James and Ivan from CVEX. CVEX? How am I pronouncing
it? Anyway, like Crypto Valley Exchange, CVEX.
Crypto Valley Exchange, CVEX. Okay, brilliant. So we have James and Ivan. If you want to just give a quick intro to who you are and what your role is in the project, and then we'll dive into talking a bit more about the project and the protocol.
Okay, I'll jump straight in because I think you're probably going to hear from Ivan a lot more today than you will hear from me. So I'm the CEO with Crypto Valley Exchange. We are a project that's bringing futures and options to the decentralized world, like a full clearing settlement exchange for traditional futures and options. We think futures and options in every asset class dominates. Perps are kind of a rounding error in most asset classes. They are expensive, they don't scale well, and we think doing futures and options in crypto is going to unlock an awful lot of capital, but it needs to be done the right way. It needs to be done on chain with the right risk. So we've been building for 2 years with quite a big team. We are about 60 people. I think there's 11 or 12, I'll add in a moment, people who've touched Stylus within the team and written smart contracts for us. But it's a big organization, and we are just pushing up to launch very, very soon, aiming at a test for all of the market makers and prop traders at the end of November, with a go live before the end of the year. So that's our set of targets, and loving the space with Stylus. Ivan?
Cool.
Yeah, Ivan. And I'm Chief Technical Officer of Crypto Valley Exchange and responsible for all technical aspects, including especially implementing our smart contracts on Stylus.
Okay, cool. So a little bit about what you are building and the protocol. So you touched a little bit on it, James. So it's options and futures trading, and you reckon then the problem you're trying to solve here is to do with basically the efficiency of that market at the moment.
Yeah, let's keep it super high level. If I go to any centralized exchange and I put some money down to trade Bitcoin on a perp, probably the most efficient way to trade Bitcoin today, I get about 10 to 1 on the amount of Bitcoin that I can buy with the amount of capital I put down. If I want to trade some Ethereum, let's say I'm going to go long Bitcoin and short Ethereum because I think there's a spread between these two to trade, I have to put down another 10% to trade the Ethereum. If I was trading any other asset class in the world, if I was to go to NYMEX and trade oil, if I want to go and trade bonds at CME and I go long one and short the other, I only have to put down my market exposure. So I might get a 60% credit back when I put that second trade on, rather than putting more collateral down. And as we look across the market, with TVL being a stat that we love, there is a way that all of the protocols are trying to capture and hold on to assets, not giving capital efficiency. If we model ourselves after the way that the rest of the world works for this, we could get a lot more trading going on for the same amount of asset without changing the risk. So that's what we're going to do. And we think we've got a big first mover advantage in that space. It's a big team, well funded, pushing hard to be there first and capture that space and offer something new and different.
Awesome. So that's cool. I mean, I didn't realize that about sort of futures, about that you get a credit back in most traditional markets against if you have multiple things out. So that's pretty cool.
It's interesting. Just one other stack. I mean, crypto is probably, for the same amount of value, about 10 times the expense of traditional finance to trade on any of the major exchanges. There are people in southern Saharan exchanges on the south side of the Sahara in Africa, or in emerging markets, that are having better capital efficiency than we are in crypto. We deserve this. We should have as the same capital efficiency that everybody else has. We should be able to lock up the same amount of capital to make the same amount of risk. It's not a difficult problem. It's solved in TradFi. Putting it on chain is hard, very complex. Both Ivan and I are very mathematical physicists, mathematics, computer programming backgrounds from a long time. So he'll talk more about some of that. But that's what it takes to turn this into a product and bring it to market.
Cool. So Stylus then. I mean, that's why we're here. Stylus, talking about Stylus. So how are you leveraging Stylus then? You know, why Stylus? How did you think about what chain to build upon? What motivated you to choose Stylus?
Do you want to start, Ivan? Because I think you can come at it from it.
Yeah, I think it's quite easy. I mean, we have quite a big team that had some experience in building smart contracts for different blockchains using Rust. We love Rust, and also we love Ethereum community, Ethereum ecosystem from also development point of view. But unfortunately, I mean, there is a lot of Rust developers in Ethereum community, but they never had experience to write smart contracts using Rust for Ethereum-like blockchains, L2 solutions. So Stylus for us was quite exciting thing, in the sense that for the first time we are able to use Rust and Wasm for building smart contracts, and at the same time having access to this huge community and infrastructure, wallets, everything.
Okay, cool. So what specific kind of like features or capabilities of Stylus attracted you then?
So maybe there's a sort of broad brush view of looking across 2 years ago, looking across all the blockchains and doing a sort of trying to assign points and look at where we should be against each of them, and looking at things like Move on Aptos. We feel really confident in the ability of Rust to build the componentization, and it's the right place for these more complex tasks. But then you also need that crossover with community, and you need the L2 roll-up aspects of it. So you need to bring all of these things together. But we did have a lot of questions very early for the team. So I'll hand back to Ivan. We asked questions before there was a lot of stuff public and got quite a lot of answers back.
Yeah. We actually start to implement our smart contract even before Stylus was released for the first time. We had some conversations with Stylus team, and there is, for me, as for technical guy, there is only one most important major feature of Stylus. Stylus is binary compatible with Ethereum, meaning that if you implement smart contract with Stylus, from any other point of view, from external perspective, it's simply smart contract on Ethereum or Ethereum-like blockchain. It's compatible with EVM, meaning that there is no disadvantages of using Rust anymore, in the sense that you are not locked into small ecosystem of smart contracts that are implemented only on Rust.
Well, I think we have this to ourselves for a moment. Ivan, he seems to have lost his connection, but maybe we can talk about our experiences with Stylus so far and what it's been like, and then when he comes back in, hopefully we're giving some value there.
Yeah, you can ask me some questions if you want. Matt, come back.
Sorry about that. I'm not quite sure what happened there. There's actually, I was just saying just before we came on air, there's my neighbor's there's some giant pump truck pumping out a sewage system or something. And last time there was a large vehicle here, they managed to knock the internet cable like off the line. And then suddenly, as soon as this happened, I was like, oh no. But no, it seems okay. So I don't know if it's just some random dropout or something, but I'm back. So sorry about that. But so yes, you were just saying about, I'm not sure what I missed there, but you were talking about kind of like the features of Stylus and kind of what brought you
to
it, right?
And the one most important that it's binary compatible with EVM and Ethereum smart contracts. Yeah, from external point of view, it's the same. Right. While at the same time you have all benefits from using Rust as programming language and using Wasm as virtual machine.
Yeah, there's a lot of other blockchains. Exactly, there's a lot of other blockchains that are using Rust. Like you said, you know,
and we had experience. Our team had experience in the past with.
There's a number there, but none of them have the kind of the EVM ABI compatibility, and that's a really like key feature because, as you were saying, James, about how liquidity, community, etc. It's one thing having the technological capabilities, but really, and I've seen this before in other projects within crypto, is that the community. That's a really big thing, right? And the liquidity, both in terms of actual funds, but in terms of other projects, right? If you create a brand new chain and you can have all the technological capability in the world, but if there isn't the dexes and the bridges and the all of those other kind of tools that people use, then you're going to have a hard time. And I think this is really what's nice about Stylus is it adds this capability to an existing ecosystem, right? So
yes, composability doesn't work if there's nobody there to compose anything.
Exactly. Well, that's a fantastic way of putting it. Yeah, and we've been talking to Uniswap, and for example, Uniswap V4 have a hook system that allows you to write hooks for their DEX, and it won't matter whether those are written in Solidity or Rust, right? Because as far as it's concerned, it's just calling a smart contract on the network. And it doesn't know which it is. And so you get that composability, the ability to kind of, replace certain bits with Stylus, with Rust code without having to change everything, which is really cool. So, okay. So what, in terms of your like developer experience, what's your developer experience been like with Stylus so far?
Okay. So as we said, we start to implement our smart contract for Stylus even before Stylus was released. So initially, it was quite a lot of discussions with Stylus team to understand what we should expect. And but honestly, I mean, let me be honest here. Stylus as technology is boring, meaning there is no adventure, no surprises most of the time. And from my point of view, again, this is maybe the best possible complement for such piece of technology because implementing, developing smart contracts is hard. And what you don't really want is some surprises. And with Stylus, we receive basically exactly what we expect for. Like we are capable to use Rust to utilize on 100% WebAssembly. And at the same time, I mean, we already understand how to build smart contracts, what API we should provide, what is circumstances, what we should take into account, how storage works even before Stylus was releasing, because all these facts was already known by the way how Ethereum is working, how Ethereum smart contract communication works. All these aspects are available from Stylus. So in that terms, Stylus is like a perfect bridge here. So it provides you exactly what you need when you think about how to implement. What if Ethereum was implemented with using Rust for smart contracts in mind from the beginning? This is kind of experience that Stylus provides you as smart contract developer.
I think we are back to us again chatting, but that's our average afternoon. So I know that a lot of this is trying to focus in on Stylus, but maybe talking about any of the limitations we've got, anything that we faced during that time, talking about sizes of contracts, that type of stuff, and what we've had to do.
I think smart contract size limitation was for us biggest challenge, because by default it is 24 kilobytes, I believe, and unfortunately, VASM as virtual machine is much it's smaller level virtual machine comparing to EVM, and usually the same logic requires more capacity for binary code, and for us it simply means that we are forced to split our smart contract on multiple smart contracts, and sometimes not in an obvious way, meaning that you need to do that based on technical limitation, not the way how your smart contract is designed. In general, my suggestion for everybody who will use Stylus is to think about that in advance, take into account that you have limits, and just take into account these limits from the beginning, trying to estimate binary size of your compiled version of your smart contract, test it early to understand when you need to split it, if you need to split it, how to make it done in the right way, taking into account that you should also pay gas for calls between pieces of your protocol. Yeah. Besides that, I think everything else was, as I said, boring, non-adventures, no surprises.
That's great to hear. Hey James, hey Evan, hey everyone. I'm David, the product marketer at Offchain Labs. I'm gonna be stepping in for Matt while he deals with his Wi-Fi issues. So Ivan, I appreciate you talking about some of those challenges that you faced when working with Stylus. Have there been any specific workarounds that you and the team have come up with to handle these?
I mean, for this specific thing, really you need to think from the beginning that likely your protocol might look like multiple smart contracts that communicates with each other. Not too much here to do from the beginning. I mean, it's not a problematic. What is problematic is if you start to think about that too late. You need to think about that in advance, and then everything will be okay.
Cool. Back again. Sorry again. I don't know what's going on here, but even switching to 3G didn't work. So I think we've got a more regional issue than just my house here. It seems like the telco is having trouble. So thank you, David, for jumping in there. So I'm not sure where we're up to here.
We're talking about challenges and limitations. Particularly, we've had the level of complexity of what we've got to try and achieve on chain is going to be bigger than the contract limits in any form anywhere. It's then how many places do you subdivide it? And I haven't asked the question recently of Ivan, but last time I asked, it was about 12 different contracts that it would need to be split into. But the EVM takes a fair portion of the contract size up, and I think that's something that can, it's better as an experience with Stylus than with some of the others, because it does present that very small. It's really important to take that into account, because people are coming at it from a Rust perspective are likely to be trying to solve larger, more complex issues that are going to result in larger smart contracts, and they need to have that piece of planning in from day one to not hit issues with it.
Exactly. There's that temptation there. You've got all of the power, and it's like, okay, great, I can use all of this power now, and I've got all of the crates library and all that lot. And suddenly you pull in a particular crate that brings in the standard library, and boom, you've kind of blown it up and used up all your available contract space there. So so that's interesting. We've spoken to some other people that have again been talking to strategies about how they split things up, and hopefully there might start to evolve some tooling and to help developers with that, maybe help split things up. But I think in some ways you can turn it to an advantage in terms of it forces you to have a very modular architecture there and split things out into smaller pieces that can be separately unit tested and that. So, kind of putting the positive spin on it, right? It can help in that regards. But yeah, it's certainly something to be aware of. I know that I was at a hackathon and some developers were trying stuff, and yeah, they were up to about a dozen contracts, having to split stuff up to do everything they needed to do. Yeah. What has, I don't know if it's been asked before, but what was your previous sort of experience with Rust? I think you said that you'd done some stuff with some other chains originally, so you'd come at this with already Rust experience. Is that correct?
I think you should go way back to the beginning, Ivan, and talk about how long you've been in Rust and what you built even before.
Personally, I was using Rust before Rust was officially released, before 1.0 version. At the time, the only thing that you can build with Rust is Rust itself, Rust compiler. So I had some experience in implementing Rust compiler, and right after that, I think even before first stable version of Rust, I built the team that was implementing blockchains on Rust Exonum. And sometime after, we built this new team, and we had tons of experience in building everything around crypto and smart contracts. Again, using Rust, we built some projects on Near, on Multiverse 6, on Concordium, and then finally, when Stylus released it, we bring to Arbitrum.
Okay, cool. So what does your development workflow look like with Stylus in terms of how you actually developing these contracts? Are you using any particular IDEs or tooling, or what does that look like?
I think everything is quite straightforward. I mean, we have a bunch of unit tests, integration tests. Maybe interesting part here is how we do fast testing, and it's partially integrated in our CI, partially it's run manually. Also, we have what we call intranet. Basically, it's our own testnet for Arbitrum that we constantly try to broke in all possible ways, just to understand our limits, how our smart contracts will behave in some corner cases. And this is an environment where our QAs is connected, so we have some internal testnet that on which we can simulate everything that is interested for us. Sometimes even implement some fixes for Arbitrum node itself, or early test some functionality that is not released yet. So if you build quite complex protocols, sooner or later, just consider to have your own testnet. It's generally a good idea. Of course, you cannot test everything in your local environment, but many things will be available for you if you have it and constantly running, not just on your laptop, but available for the whole your team.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, integrating in CI is helpful.
Yeah, and maybe about fast testing. I think one of the challenging aspects for Stylus as technology here is as usual, what kind of tooling of what kind of infrastructure you can use here. Because, for example, if you would like to test your Solidity smart contracts, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of tools, instruments, everything you want. But for Stylus, from the beginning, there is not so many, but we can leverage here from the fact that we are using Rust. So what we did is utilize American Fuzzy Loop, one of the most advanced fast tester in the world, for our smart contract. Basically, we compile our protocol in x86-64 architecture and fast test it to make sure that there is no issues in logic implementation, that everything works perfectly. Who didn't know, American Fuzzy Loop is just tools that find security vulnerabilities and issues in literally everything that you know, all browsers, all operation systems, Linux kernel, everything, databases, all well-known databases. So we utilize that to fast test our own protocol, try to understand what is non-trivial corner cases or sequence of actions that potential attacker can do to somehow broke our internal invariance in our smart contract. And often we find some very non-trivial flow that requires, I don't know, maybe 15 unique, very non-usual actions that should be done to put our smart contract in very specific state that is almost impossible to find if you, as human, just look on your code trying to understand if it's correct or not. But so here, from one point of view, disadvantage because there is no tools maybe from smart contract world, from crypto world, but there is at the same time there is tons of available tools from the Rust world here.
Yeah.
And if you can utilize it, it's like really a lot. Not even start talking about a huge amount of libraries that you can now compile that was not initially intended to work in Rust in smart contract environment. But in principle, if you have some Rust libraries that is compiled as no std, generally it means that you can just use it as dependency in your smart contract now, whatever it is.
Yeah, and that's a common theme we've seen in these discussions with developers about testing. And like you said, that okay, whilst we might have limited tooling for smart contract testing in Rust and Stylus specifically at the moment, you have everything from the wider Rust ecosystem. And as you sort of said there about compiling it down to x86 code and fuzz testing it there, so you can actually deploy it and probably fuzz test it in a much faster way than you would be able to if you're trying to emulate a blockchain, right? You're not going to do Solidity, a fuzz test Solidity at the same speed at which you could fuzz test something natively compiled down to x86 architecture, for example.
Sure. We test our smart contract code, but we compile it specifically for the CPU where it will be tested, so it's way more faster than fast testing of virtual machines.
Cool. Okay. So are there any specific parts of your protocol that you that benefit the most from Stylus in terms of what you're doing here?
I think one of the non-obvious advantage of using Stylus and again using Rust here is that again, if you implement some complex protocol, likely you need to re-implement some logic of your protocol on backend. So you would like to pre-calculate something, or you want to provide some estimations of what will happen if you call this action of your smart contract. And sooner or later, you find yourself that in scenario when you implement in many things twice, one for smart contract, one for backend, most likely on two different languages. Here we basically split what we are doing on many different packages, and many of these packages at the same time we use as dependency for our smart contract and as dependency for our backend. For example, calculation of required marginals on CVEX is quite complicated algorithm, and we have one reference implementation for that and implemented on Rust, and we just use this implementation on smart contract and in our backend, and we 100% sure that it's exactly the same. There is no reason to call smart contract to calculate required margin, because exactly the same code we can run on backend and even on frontend, because it can be compiled as WASM library and just you can run it literally in user browser, piece of your smart contract.
Yeah, I mean that's really nice with Rust. The fact that you can use it both on chain and off chain. I've likened it previously to it's like what JavaScript did and Node.js did. For browser stuff. Originally you had front end developers writing web stuff in JavaScript, and then back end had to use a different language. And then with Node.js you then were able to have JavaScript and have use the same language front and back, and then you could utilize the same libraries. And especially when you're doing stuff like anything like heavy to do with cryptographic routines or anything like that, you want to avoid those weird little edge cases where this particular language handles value overflows differently to this other language, or rounding is slightly different, or whatever it might be. There's those little weird edge cases where you're maintaining two different implementations in two different languages, and you can sometimes get that little bit of inconsistency, as well as having to spend double the time maintaining it, double the time testing it, having it in, and double potentially the audit.
Exactly.
If you've got it written once in one language, that's one thing to audit, one thing to maintain. So that reduces the cost there, in terms of what you're doing as well. So that's cool. So in terms of kind of general kind of advice that you might have for other developers, have there been any like development tools, frameworks that you found particularly helpful building with Stylus, or any kind of best practices for people building?
I would say maybe the best thing that you can do for yourself to improve your experience with Stylus is just some time in the evening opening official documentation of Arbitrum and just reading it as a book from the beginning to the end. Maybe at the moment when you read it, you will not understand why you need that, but sooner or later you will need to understand everything. And from my point of view, documentation of Arbitrum for developers and Stylus particularly is quite well written. There is nothing non-important, and practically everything is described, but you might not know that the issue you're trying to solve already described it in documentation if you didn't read that before. So try to read it from beginning to the end at least once, then you will remember that basically everything likely existed. So yeah, honestly, I don't even remember that we will use some another source of information that for something that was not described in documentation itself.
So lots of love for the Arbitrum docs then. That's good to hear.
For
then.
Sure.
The community's improved a lot as well since we started.
Yeah.
I think right at the very beginning, we were a good long way in to develop when someone said, "Oh, there is now a Stylus community on Telegram." And I think we'd missed its launch, and it was probably only 30 or 40 people big when we joined it, and we were comfortably the biggest group trying to write on it at the time. If we'd put everybody on, we'd have added 30% to the size of it.
Yeah.
But now it's a much more mature place. There are access points, and the people in there are responding reasonably well and reasonably quickly. So I'd make sure that you properly get connection to all of the different channels that you can ask questions when you get issues.
Yeah, so there's the Stylus, for people watching, there's the Stylus Telegram group, and there's also the Stylus channel on the Arbitrum Discord as well. You can get to those from the arbitrum.io website. There's links at the top. You can get there to those. But yeah, I just brought up the Telegram now. So it's 299 members now. So just shy of 300 members. So it's grown tenfold since you started there. So that's great. And yeah, it's a very busy, active channel. There's lots on there and lots of good help. So that's good to hear that you're finding that useful and helpful there. So that's cool. Good. Okay. How do you see Stylus impacting the broader DeFi ecosystem? Beyond what you're just doing, do you see any specific areas there?
I believe there is a lot of Rust developers who are working in blockchain, in crypto, and also if you are a Rust developer, likely you have capabilities on implementing code in a responsible way, trying to guarantee fault tolerance, all required aspects. Usually you even if you didn't write smart contracts before, usually a system engineer, you already have all this required mindset to implement smart contracts. And with Stylus, finally, we have capability to write smart contracts in a most fast-growing ecosystem here. So I think most important aspect is that more Rust engineers will work inside Ethereum community with all two solutions, with everything here.
Yeah, that's an interesting point there about the language. I guess for most people, Rust is probably not their first language. It's probably their second or third, programming language. So they already have a fair amount of experience. So maybe it's slightly self-selecting in that regard. But you have a culture within Rust and within Rust developers that they probably moved there because they want the memory safety, the type safety. They're aware of things like that positions Rust apart from some of the more traditional, the C++s and whatever people might have used, before Rust in that sort of space. So I think that's a very interesting point there, is that it's opening up the blockchain ecosystem to not just a whole class of developers, but a whole class of fairly well experienced developers that probably have cut their teeth on a number of other languages and have an appreciation for what Rust brings to the table. It's pretty cool.
That I think there's also a step change that's happening with the people who are coming into the marketplace. So if you were to go out to a lot of the conferences 2 years ago, then it was dozens and dozens of people in branded hoodies from whatever their latest project and everything was. And as you start to go out now in Austin and in London and some aspects of Singapore, you see a lot more of the financial community coming in, a lot more institutional flow coming into that. And one of the things that means is that we're starting to get more complex use cases starting to come through, where there are, and maybe a simple thing at the center of it that you're trying to do lending or whatever, but with so many corner cases and so much sophistication that these things don't fit very easily. And the more sort of solidity-based stuff, trying to capture that complexity and to test it and know that it works, becomes very, very onerous. You can't just runtime test or all of that to that extent. You need to be able to break this into components, and Rust suits that so much better. And I think we'll see over the next 5-6 years this continuous reforming of the financial community and a lot of other industries to have more blockchain at the center of them, and they will need to see that this has been done in languages like Rust, where that they can take that complexity and they can prove that that can work. So we think we're just at the forefront of doing that, and we needed something like this to be able to do it in this space. We couldn't have written this project 2 years ago. We can only deliver it now.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, one of my colleagues, Crisco, actually from Offchain Labs, in the Stylus Pro series a couple of weeks ago, actually demonstrated implementing the Black-Scholes, pricing algorithm for futures and options in Stylus in Rust. And like you said, there's probably a whole swathe of these financial algorithms, calculations, whatever, that are probably just kind of beyond the capabilities of Solidity, both in terms of the computational power or hitting the number, stack limits, or the number of variables you can have at any one time. And so just being able to open, blockchain up to that with Rust, and the fact that there's probably, like you said, a lot of financial, developers now building stuff in Rust as well, from the, traditional finance worlds, kind of giving them a route into blockchain. That's pretty cool.
It's a very, very, very familiar set of phrases that you're using there. Ivan and I have, just the two of us, spent hours and hours talking about implementation of, well, it's actually Black 76, probably more appropriate for crypto, but too many options. But how we build that and how we have to manage the fact that you can't do maybe 10,000 updates a second. So what do you do to make sure that you keep this appropriate? So there's been those conversations at length. We wouldn't even be able to have those without this. We would be at a off-chain, trying to build an off-chain centralized exchange and fighting against all of the regulatory space that's trying to make sure that they're running a completely different way. Whereas we can just be transparent and show people how we operate, rather than having to fight to put a big organization together and get the right oversight.
Yeah, there's two, like I mentioned, I'm off to Chiang Mai to Edge City later on today. And there's the two things I want to do there within Stylus and Rust, just to play around during the hackathon, is one is to implement a Kalman filter in Rust in Stylus for pricing, as part of a Uniswap hook to do that. And then the other is to actually do machine learning inference on chain. I'm actually going to have a go at solving one of or implementing one of the Kaggle AI competitions, and actually doing the inference within a Rust smart contract on Stylus, just to see what's possible there. I think it's going to be possible. I think it's going to be doable, and actually implement a small perceptron MLP network in a smart contract.
I think it might be off topic, but in Wasm you have, I don't remember how it's called, plugins maybe, and they have themed instructions extension for Wasm. And if Stylus team will decide to add this this extension to virtual machine of Stylus, it would be great, because it's open for you possibility to effectively do things like matrix multiplication, convolution, everything that you usually need for artificial intelligence inference, meaning that we can run AI as smart contract on the top of Arbitrum.
Yeah, at the moment, there's portability concerns that people have to be aware of, because you don't quite know the architecture it's eventually going to be running on. But you know, once we get to a point where we can do that in a more portable way, or conditionally, whatever it might be, you know, same with floating point, right? At the moment, you know, do that in a way. But again, within Rust, there are portable floating point libraries, for example, that do software emulation of floating point, and that is, you know, one option that people,
you can just use it,
which
as
is
dependence again.
Exactly. Yeah, just bringing that in and use that as a dependency. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so in terms of kind of your protocol, CVEX, where's it going? How's Stylus going to help you scale and expand it? What's coming up next? And you know, how can users try it out?
Sure. So we're pushing towards go live. So all of our focus right now is trying to get the platform live, trying to get the major partners through the connection process and verifying that everything can work okay, and then reaching out to the community. We're enormous in terms of pre-launch community. So I think I shared some of that shortly before the meeting, but there are 600,000 people on our X. So we are 2 or 3 times the size of DYDX. We've got a bigger Discord than Sushi and than Uniswap. So we have a lot of interest, and it's grown fairly steadily. It's gone viral the last few weeks, but 130,000 people have been in the testnet. 460,000 have signed up to the sort of affiliate and all the schemes around it. And the testnet's been running now for best part of 6 months in some form. As we push live over the next month, that's where people can see all this. And it's at cvex.xyz. That gives everything, and the Twitter should be fairly easy to find from this, so cvex_xyz, and there's loads and loads of information out there. Our plan then, after we go live with futures, is to push into early next year to get the options live, to have OTC support in there, and then really to try to target transferring all of that perp volume that's floating around the market to trade futures and options like every other asset class, and demonstrate how much less squeezable, cheaper, more capital efficient in margin terms they are. And hopefully that unlocks a lot of capital to then go into projects rather than to be sat there supporting margin in positions around Bitcoin. So it's very, very extensible. Down the line, 6 months from now, if people want to write their own platform to launch a market for derivatives for futures and options on Techstars or Meet or real world assets or anything that they want to tokenize, they can come in, start up a platform. It will have its own separate set of margin alongside it, and they can use Arbitrum again. It sits as the back end. So all of the people that want to build and run these little markets for themselves all over the world, and there are absolutely thousands of them. There was a Association of Futures Market conference the other week, which is where all of the small exchanges of the world gather in TradFi. And there was somebody there presenting and talking about our product and how if this catches on, suddenly there's no need for very expensive banking intermediaries in all of these micro markets across the third world, and people will be able to access and trade and guarantee that the assets are looked after by using trustless protocols rather than having to use some expensive banking. So there's lots and lots to do, and investment rounds, token launches, everything's on the cards for the next few months. Ivan,
and moving on Arbitrum Orbit, but it's a topic for the next podcast, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, there's interest in Orbit. We're very, very reliant on making sure that the stablecoin is a good quality and available to us in the right form. Because if somebody pops up an options protocol and says to you, "Oh, we're going to run on our own app chain," then as an options trader, run a mile, because that immediately tells you that they don't understand default risk. and people are going to be pricing the bridge, not pricing the option. So it needs to be native, high quality stablecoin, essentially at the moment, basically USDC on a native chain. But USDC is wonderful. It gives you access to all of these different places. So people will come and trade on us using their Solana wallet, not knowing that it's Arbitrum that they're executing on underneath, because they can push the money in, execute through, and take it back out again. They don't need to know where it is in detail, and it just produces loads and loads of transactions. And we think we may become a sizable portion of the transaction flow just fairly naturally on Arbitrum.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds really cool. Okay. Before we wrap up, anything further either of you two wanted to say? There's your chance.
I've just hit all my sales points.
Yeah.
Ivan?
Cool. Anything, Ivan?
I know. Thanks a lot to the Stylus team for being so helpful during all this journey.
I think that's exactly
yeah.
That we've had some really
help us a lot.
Yeah, but we've had some really good experiences with the individual developers.
Yeah,
there's been some great responses in the early days. The product manager who moved on to other great things was very, very useful and very, very helpful. So not had any bad experiences across the team. And even Ed gave me a bunch of time in Wyoming recently. So yes, everybody's been very useful.
Yeah, it's a fantastic team at OCL that have been building Stylus. I mean, they're really, really knowledgeable people, really good. And they will be in DevCon as well. Are you folks going to Thailand? Are you going to be at DevCon at all?
No, it's probably the first of the conferences of the year, the major ones that we're missing. It's been too much. I maybe just to sort of comment on, not to bring any politics into it, but a very large portion of our team is based in the Ukraine.
Right.
So they largely are not able to travel. So that puts a load on the few of us that are outside, and therefore just can't do every single conference. But yeah, we've got a large portion of the people building in the Ukraine.
Yeah, no, understandable, obviously, and hopefully they're safe and in what they're doing there. So cool. Thank you both for coming on and talking about your experiences with Stylus, and thanks for everybody for tuning in. And once again, excuse my network connection dropping out a couple of times during that. That's great. And for everybody else that wants to kind of learn more about Stylus and find out more, we will be, like I said, at Edge City Lana at the hackathon there starting this weekend. So we'll be there for the next 10 days. We'll be at DevCon in Bangkok. There's a number of workshops going on by people from Onchain Labs and from the Arbitrum Foundation. So come along to that, and there'll be other people who successfully, like CVX, are building on top of Stylus. So you can have a chat with them and see. And for anything else, check out arbitrum.io and check out the docs. There's links to the Discord and Telegram channel there. And obviously as well, check out CVX on X and go and check out their the stuff that they're building as well. So fantastic. Thanks a lot all, Ivan, and good to chat to you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.